6:33, and this is Business Express. Now, it's Zibby here, and this morning I have a special guest joining me, and we're talking about the Japa syndrome. Yes, so just in case you don't know what it is, it's a term that has been associated with migration. So people moving from Nigeria to different countries across the globe in search of better opportunities for themselves, for their families, and hopefully back for Nigeria in the long term. But I've got a special guest joining me for this conversation. My guest is Kelvin Emannuel. He's the CEO of Dairy Farms. Good morning, Kelvin. Welcome to Business Express.
Good morning, Zibby. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to meet you as well. All right, Kevin. So let's talk about Japa and the economy. Now, how has exchange rates devaluation affected purchasing power of the middle-income workers, particularly in urban areas? And how has this influenced this so-called Japa wave?
So, if you look at where we were in 2014, consider the fact that Nigerians didn't have an issue popping into Dubai for the weekend. People who were salary earners in Lagos, in Abuja, they didn't have an issue using their Naira cards, Just recently, some of the banks suspended, a few of the major tier one banks suspended the use of Naira card for transactions totally, after reducing it to like $50, $100, and $20 per month. Quite ridiculous because, 8 years ago, people were shopping $1,000, $2,000, $30,000 from their Naira cards. People were buying all kinds of stuff. Now, the important thing is that somebody who was earning 500,000 Naira a month 8 years ago had at least $30,000 at the end of the month. And on some months, they either shop or they decide to just travel for the weekend to London, to Paris. Today, they can't do that. Today, that same 500,000 Naira they earn is barely able to buy them $1,000. The price of things abroad hasn't changed. It hasn't reduced because the leadership in Nigeria decided to make a series of continuously horrible economic decisions, and they've gotten Nigeria to where it is now, where $1 to a Naira is 475. So people are looking at these things and they're asking themselves, why are we here in Nigeria? Why are we working? Even if I'm earning 2 million Naira a month, my 2 million Naira a month is not even able to get me the $30,000 that I was getting with my 500,000 Naira a month in 2014. So you cannot discount the fact that a major factor in this Japa wave is purchasing power and inflation. It's ridiculous, the level of inflation you have in Nigeria today. And there's a very, very major link between your exchange rates and your inflation. Because if you look at the fact that 70% of most of the manufacturing done in Nigeria is done with inputs that are imported into the country, you begin to understand that with the fall of the Naira from 181, 196 band we had in 2015, early months, November, January, February 2015, to where we have it today at 745. It even dropped to like 900 a few months ago last year. You understand that there is a huge influence in terms of cost push inflationary buffers between exchange rates and inflation. And this has contributed to people just saying to themselves that being in Nigeria is completely not worth it, because even if you earn 20 million Naira a year, you're barely able to afford $30,000, which is like below minimum wage in the US, for example. It's ridiculous.
So speaking about inflation, how is it shaping the future of the labor market here in Nigeria? And also, how do you think it's affecting the ability of companies to retain their talent, really?
So this is a big question. In fact, just this past week, one company, one of the fintech companies announced, I don't know if you heard about it, that they're moving their headquarters to London. It's ridiculous because the high turnover rates In one of the fintech companies in agency banking, they are PTSP, have a PTSP license with the CB. I'm not going to mention the name. Very popular fintech company that people use on a daily basis to do their POS transactions. They provide the backbone infrastructure. Now you consider how much of talent they lose and how they are fighting with foreign employers, especially with this post-COVID era where companies are getting used to the idea of recruiting internationally, cutting their staffs locally abroad, and having them work from home remotely. Imagine how much competition. So if, for example, a company abroad is offering your front-end developer or UI UX engineer, software engineer, maybe $10,000 per month, $10,000 in Nigeria is 7.5 million. How do you afford to pay a tech talent 7.5 million when you were paying that same person 1 million a month? How do you compete with that? So they're looking at these things and they're asking themselves, look, how do we compete? Some of them are saying to themselves, look, if we can relocate abroad the entire business and then recruit the same people that are moving away from Nigeria, maybe to help our business. But then for the companies who cannot afford to relocate, it's a stiff competition. And you've seen that in the banking industry. You've seen that the network and engineering of banks have been failing recently. There have been so many downtimes in the last 24 months, especially last 18 months. Banks are having so much downtime, more than they used to have. There's been an increase in fraud cases. You cannot discount that it's deliberately tied to the fact that a lot of the engineering department from banks are leaving nearly on a monthly basis. Wow. So it's difficult for you to replace talent, because even if you bring new talents and train them, to take time for them to get up to speed. And then when you get them up to speed, there's no binding contract you can sign with them to tie them down. When they want to leave, they leave. So this is the crisis that Nigeria is currently facing. And it's an issue that, honestly, I find it difficult to believe that the government does not think is a state of emergency. Because even in the health sector, University of Ibadan, the chief medical director announced how he has had over 681 highly trained doctors and nurses leave the UI, University of Ibadan Teaching Hospital, within the last few years. It's a crisis. It's a crisis. And it's unfortunate because the government is completely they're lost. I heard a few days ago where one minister says that the government plans to go and recruit medical personnel from abroad. And I'm asking myself, if you can't pay the ones in Nigeria here, how do you pay the ones abroad who are earning $10,000-15,000 on a monthly basis? It's completely insane.
We've got some messages coming through the WhatsApp number for your comments, 0809 440 981. This one is from Benga, and he says, good morning. People move from places with reduced economic opportunities to where there are a host of other factors like access to health, basic amenities like power and water. And Oganel Chuko says another major reason is the insecurity situation in the country, which has worsened over the years. Now, Kelvin, unemployment rate in Nigeria is at 33%. So is this a problem of unemployability, underemployment, or just perhaps a lack of supply of jobs in the labor market?
So the economic situation has made life difficult for a lot of companies. Some companies have downsized over the last couple of years. Some companies are shut down and relocated to other parts of Africa. Some companies have relocated to neighboring West African countries. Some companies have just packed up their business and they've left. Companies that were planning to expand or set up operations, companies are not bringing in investments to invest like they used to. Our FDI numbers have dropped. In 2011, 2012, we had the peak at about 11 billion US dollars. Today, we have FDI numbers at around $1.5 billion. Investments are not coming in. Companies want forward guidance. They can't get it, especially with exchange rates, how the external risk of devaluation affects the internal risk, rate of return for companies. It's a major issue. Okay, so I would say it's both an issue of unemployability. Yeah. It's difficult for you to train and retain talents. Yeah. companies don't want to invest. They are reluctant to invest in retraining fresh talent and then having them leave. Okay. So it's an issue of unemployability, underemployment, but more importantly, there is lack of supply. There is lack of supply in the markets. If you like, it was in November, Adax Petroleum announced that they were closing shop, and they're moving out of Nigeria. And they transferred the asset back to the NNPC in a sale. Adax was a major employer of labor in the upstream oil and gas industry. Adax was the Swiss company that was sold to Sinopec, the Chinese Sinopec. So you can imagine that loss of jobs. And there are quite a number of companies like that. So the business environment is very hostile, and it's making it really, really difficult for employers to plan.
I've got a message from Yinka, and Yinka says, I won't totally agree with Kelvin. How about we look at things from this angle? An American that earns in dollars does not need your naira for anything. Rather simply put, that our inability to manufacture makes us dependent on the foreign currency. So maybe there should be conversations on how we can be less dependent on FX. Now, in Paris, a monthly rent would go for around 1,400 euros, which is equivalent to my yearly rent here in Lagos. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. And Frank says, good morning. Unemployment may be high, that is having a high supply of people in the market. However, the required skill set may be lacking. And let's take one final question because we're almost out of time. So Kelvin, I want to ask this though. Do you think that Nigeria will recover from this mass exodus of skilled essential workers? And in some way, are we in some sort of state of emergency?
Some people argue that we've had this wave before. However, this time around is different. I don't know what is going to happen next month, but I would say the party that wins will determine the direction of the Japa movement. I don't think that is not a cause for concern. I think it's a cause of concern, and especially in areas and sectors where you classify it as essential, like healthcare. The pace at which healthcare personnel are leaving Nigeria is a serious state of emergency, and the pace at which foreign governments are actively looking to recruit. For example, British teachers are relocating to the Middle East and Southeast Asia. And recently, the British government has announced that they want to start recruiting Nigerian teachers. The Nigerian government is ignoring Nigerian teachers, taking them for granted. Last month, ASU went on strike for 8 months, right? So if we don't address the issue in the healthcare sector, it's going to extend to teaching. You can imagine losing all your essential workers abroad. I honestly think it's a state of emergency, and I think that we have a cause for worry. And whoever wins the next election, it should be like a policy priority on how to ensure that you incentivize people from moving abroad.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have on Business Express this morning. Thank you so much, Kelvin Emannuel, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Zibby.
And that is it for Business Express. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on Smooth Breakfast. Brought to you by All right. Thank you so much, Kevin. Really nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. Was it good?
And have a brilliant day ahead.
Was it good?
It was. The time went by so quickly, as always. I'm sure you're used to doing these sort of interviews because of your company and all.
Right, I know.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, have a good day. Thank you. Bye. Bye.